Colgate and Crest. There's probably more of that toothpaste sold than any two brands in the country. And it says right on the box that if you swallow the product, you call poison control. First time I did this, it was live on the air on a radio show. And it was a live call-in show. This lady calls in about a half hour after I made this little presentation. And she says, John, I went to my medicine cabinet, and it says right on the tube, just like you said, call poison control if you swallow it. Here's a couple of things that are hiding in plain sight to make this point. We've all heard the Catholic Church and the Vatican. Of course, the Vatican and the Catholic Church is a country. A lot of people don't think about it, but it is a country. They have their own postage stamps, for example. The Vatican also has, maybe I should use past tense, they had a library open every working day for centuries, up until July of 2007. Now Rome is, 80, 100 miles from the ocean, from the Mediterranean Sea, but it's not very high above sea level. In July of 2007, the Vatican announced that they were closing the Vatican Library. It had not been closed in centuries, hiding it in plain sight. The reason they gave, the publicly stated reason, was that we have a structural problem in this building and we got to correct that. We're going to shut down the library. It will be reopened in 2010. By 2010, ladies and gentlemen, it will be someplace else. In fact, it's probably already in the process of being moved. Here's another example of something being hidden in plain sight. I know we have most people in this audience either have internet access or know somebody that does. You put this in Google, CIA in Denver. CIA in Denver, in Google. And you'll find that public announcements from the CIA going back into 2007 that they're moving their entire domestic division from Langley, Virginia, which is about 85 feet above sea level, to Denver, Colorado. Now, the first publicly stated reason was kind of silly, and they got tired of being laughed at, so they stopped stating that. I'll tell you what that is in a moment. What they're saying right now is, quote unquote, for operational reasons. That's the publicly stated reason now. The original reason, we want to break up the old boy network that's been in place for so many decades in the CIA so things will run better. Nobody believed that. That was just too silly. My contacts inside the CIA said, John, we're just scratching our heads. And that's before they got my information. We don't know why we're being moved. They're not telling us. They're not telling us. They're just saying, if you want your career and you want your pension, pack your bags and go to Denver. Otherwise, your career is toast. EPA, our friends. Now, a lot of people make fun of the EPA and hate the EPA, but like most government agencies, most of the people that work there are good men and women with good intentions, including a lot of scientists. The EPA had a library, past tense, until 2007. The library contained the largest collection of cross-referenced, important term, cross-referenced articles and manuscripts on man-made compounds and biological agents in the English language. In 2007, it was closed. The EPA library was closed, and it was a number of different locations around the country, closed to even EPA scientists could not access it. Anybody see Al Gore's film, An Inconvenient Truth? Okay, once again, I encourage people to watch this movie. There's some science in there, there's some science fiction. The science is about what will happen in the future, abrupt climate change and rising ocean levels. The science fiction is what's causing it. It's not man-made greenhouse gases, like he says. That's a distraction. And that tactic was decided on many, many years ago, sometime in the late 70s, early 80s, that they would use that as the pretext to keep people thinking things are going to be okay. The science leaves out something, and the science fiction adds something. Al Gore gives a timeline for when these events are going to happen. Abrupt climate change and rising ocean levels. The timeline that Al Gore gives in his movie is the same timeline that the federal government gives out through the NASA Goddard Space Flight Institute. Say that fast 10 times. The NASA Goddard Space Flight Institute, which the Queen, Her Majesty, visited last spring when she was in this country, by the way, because she's got taking a sudden interest in science. Jim Hansen is the director of the NASA Goddard Space Flight Institute, and the timeline he puts out and the timeline Al Gore puts out is the exact same timeline, and here it is. It's kind of clever what they did in the movie, the way they said it. But in 2016, things will start to get bad, abrupt climate change and rising ocean levels. And then about 2050, things will really get bad, abrupt climate change and rising ocean levels. Exact same timeline put out by the federal government through NASA. NASA is part of the military, by the way. If you notice, these space flight shuttles go up, captain this, lieutenant that, colonel, I mean, it's the military. It's always been the military. That's the official timeline put up by the federal government. Now, the real timeline. I found out through my confidential sources what the real timeline is, and I found out why they're doing what they're doing right now, moving the CIA from Langley, Virginia to Denver right now. These relocations, which you could call evacuations, are ongoing right now, due to be complete in December of 2009, about 21 months. They're due to have everybody who's part of continuity of government planning. It's not all federal employees. If you work for Health and Human Services, you're toast. There's no place waiting for you in Denver. People in the intelligence agencies, people in certain parts of the military, not all the military. The scientists, the engineers, the doctors that they want to have in these shelters when everything breaks loose. That's who's being relocated, that's who's being sent to these shelters. These shelters are literally hundreds of millions of your tax dollars where people can live and work and have hot showers and pizzas and video movies for years without ever leaving the place and be quite comfortable. There's other things that could be happening in the next couple of years. Those of us who research these matters and share these concerns, we all know that there's multiple agendas proceeding forward, and that what we sometimes refer to as a New World Order, which will be basically corporations running everything, banks and corporations, they fully expect to come out on the other side of this intact. A fellow radio talk show host from my station, he lives down in northwest Arkansas, not far from Walmart headquarters. He says, John, I get plain brown envelopes with no return address sent to me from people that work inside there at middle and upper management levels, giving blueprints of the shelters that Walmart's built for their people. They expect to come out on this. Another friend of mine was working with a Catholic group here in St. Louis, and his job was to help set up military-grade radio communications between the Vatican group in St. Louis and the Catholic group in St. Louis, excuse me, and the Vatican. Military-grade, two-way communications. And we're not talking 10-4 good buddy CB stuff. The real military-grade radio communications. The agendas of the people that control the world, the international bankers and the Fortune 500 and so forth, is to have a planet with